Let's talk year two quarterbacks.
No huddle, Wilson end zone, caught, touchdown, Elijah Moore.
What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Talking Jets with Tigo, and today I wanted to go over the 6 quarterbacks that are going into year 2 of their careers, what teams have done around those quarterbacks, and why I think Zach Wilson is in the best position to have that year 2 explosion. I'm going to talk Zach Wilson last, and so I want to go in order from what the position that they were drafted. So we're going to go Jacksonville Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance at the 49ers, Justin Fields at the Chicago Bears, Mac Jones in New England, and then we're also going to throw in Davis Mills because he's very clearly going to be the starting quarterback in Houston. And then last but not least, we'll wrap it back around with Zach Wilson as the last quarterback that we're going to talk about. Now, before we hop into that, guys, the channel is doing a giveaway. It is based on the draft and how many subscribers we can get by the draft. So if you have not already, hit that subscribe button down below. A like really, really helps the video, and I really appreciate it. And that's it. Let's hop right into it. So I wanted to start talking about Trevor Lawrence. Now, let's be real here, right? With the whole Trevor Lawrence situation and what happened with him in his year 1, right? So it wasn't great. We all know that it wasn't great because obviously and clearly, guys, it was atrocious. Urban Meyer is an absolute dumpster fire of a head coach. He's the worst head coach ever to transition from college to the NFL. He was woefully underprepared. He was incredibly, overly bearingly aggressive and excessive, and we could see that it just did not work at all in Jacksonville. Now, the benefit is that it can't get much worse, right? Like, Doug Peterson has a Super Bowl ring. We've seen what he can do in Philly, and I think that fracture that happened in Philadelphia was a little bit of the front office and the head coach kind of butting heads on what the direction of the team wanted to be. I think that Doug Peterson really wanted to keep Carson Wentz. I think the front office wanted to move on from Carson Wentz, and then you saw that dichotomy happen. Doug Peterson is without a job, and now he's going to Jacksonville. Now, when you look at rookie statistics from Trevor Lawrence, they're rookie statistics. They a lot of what we're seeing here makes a lot of sense when you take that team into consideration, right? He had a 59.6 completion percentage. He had 12 touchdowns to 17 interceptions. He was sacked a total 32 times, and he had an overall QBR of 33.5. Oh, and he threw for 3,641 yards, and then he ran for 334 yards. Now, of course he did, right? That offensive line in Jacksonville last year was really bad. It wasn't good. They could not keep Trevor Lawrence standing up. When you take into consideration that they lost Travis Etienne early in a game, in a system that we believed was going to run the ball a lot. And then I'm pretty sure James Robinson got hurt throughout the year too. You just weren't helping Trevor at all throughout that year. And then as much as I like DJ Chark and all of those guys that were in that wide receiver room, you could just very clearly tell that there isn't that much depth in the wide receiver room in Jacksonville. He was throwing to nobody, and that's the offensive scheme was really, really bad. And it's just there was a lot of things that were going on in Jacksonville last year that you could really just toss it up and blame the coaches there. Now, there are absolutely bright spots on Jacksonville, and there's a lot of things going on, and here are some of the benefits and the things that I think that will benefit Jacksonville moving forward. One, they have the number 1 pick in the draft. And with the number 1 pick in the draft, they can go a couple of ways. Now, I believe that the best thing for them to do is to go offensive line at number 1 overall. I think they should take Ike Ekwonu. Now, let me explain why. I think that Ike Ekwonu is so far and above better at offensive line as an offensive line prospect than everybody else in the offensive line room in this year's draft. And I think protecting Trevor Lawrence should be the number 1 priority for that team. I know that they franchise tagged Cam Robinson and they have Jawan Taylor, but I don't think that those guys are better than Ikem Ekwonu at all. Now, let's say you want to run it with Cam Robinson and Jawan Taylor. Like, that's fine. You can bump Ikem Ekwonu into the guard for a year because I don't think you're going to re-sign Cam Robinson long-term, and then you can bump him out to left tackle next year. And bringing in Brandon Scherf is going to help. Like, that's a big, big signing. And you've got an okay center in Shatley there. So, for me, I think that that's a great way to help the team. Now, what most mock drafts and what most people think that the Jaguars are going to do is that they're going to take Aiden Hutchinson, edge rusher, out of Michigan. Now, this is another great pick because they already have on that team one of the best edge rushers in the NFL in Josh Allen. He has exploded onto the scene, and he is proving to be one of the best edge rushers in the NFL, like I said. And if you partner that up with Aiden Hutchinson, another young, upcoming talent that is there to show that he can hang, now you've got two serious edge rushers. And what that means is that you're going to give Trevor Lawrence more snaps at more touches of the football. If Trevor Lawrence can touch the ball more, he's going to get more opportunities to throw. And if he takes that step in the right direction, you hope and you assume that things are going to go really well in Jacksonville long term. So there's a lot of hope in Jacksonville. The real issue and the reason I don't think that Trevor's going to have this explosion of a year, it's because he's going to go into his second year into the NFL, and they're going into a completely new offensive scheme. They're going to go into an RPO-heavy scheme with what, I'm assuming they're going to go into a very RPO-heavy scheme because that's what he did in Philly. So let's see. I think Trevor Lawrence has upside, and I think that it's like there's obviously reason that we should believe in him and keep him in our minds in the sense of like he can be a good quarterback. The real thing that concerns me with Jacksonville is not the head coaching room anymore because I believe in Doug Peterson. It's that front office. I don't like the GM. I don't believe in the GM. I think keeping the GM was a mistake, but let's see what happens here. There's a lot of good pieces there, and with the number one pick, there's a lot of directions that they can go where they can really, really solidify this team and really make a lot of moves to help Trevor Lawrence moving forward. And we didn't even talk about the addition of Christian Kirk, obviously. They've brought in a lot of players to really help out that team. So let's see what happens, and let's move on. So let's talk about Trey Lance and the San Francisco 49ers. Now, Trey Lance, I think it would be easy for everybody to say that, of course, Trey Lance is going to be in the best opportunity in the NFL. Like, look at that San Francisco 49ers roster. They are out of this world good. Like, they were one game away from the Super Bowl. Like, and I get all of those things. And I understand what you're saying. But the reason I don't necessarily think that he is in the best situation out of all of these year two quarterbacks is because we don't know if he's even going to start in year two. Jimmy G is still on that roster. Jimmy G brought them a game away from the Super Bowl. I'd be hard pressed for you to tell me that they like absolutely hands down should move on from Jimmy Garoppolo onto Trey Lance. Trey Lance needs time. That was the biggest thing with Trey Lance, is that he has an incredible arm, incredible upside, but he definitely needs time to sit. I don't know if what we saw in those very few games from Trey Lance that we can say 100% that he's ready to be an NFL starter. I think he still needs a little bit more time. I think he needs a lot more reps with the ones. And so for me, I look at it and I go, I think they're going to keep Jimmy G. I think that offensive line unit is relatively good. I think obviously they need to replace the guards that they lost in Laken Tomlinson and everything like that. But you still got Brandon Ayuk. You still have Deebo Samuel. They brought in Ray McLeod. You still have that run game with Mitchell. You still have one of the better defensive fronts in football, Joey Bosa, Armstead. Not Joey, Nick Bosa, Armstead. Like, they have one of the better linebacker rooms, one of the best safety rooms, one of the best cornerback rooms. Like, it's hard to sit here and say that they're going to be a bad team, because I don't think they're going to be a bad team. I think they're going to be a great team. The question that I have with Trey Lance is he going to be the starting quarterback in San Francisco? I don't think so. I don't see how you move on from Jimmy G at this point. You might be trying to trade him and all of these things, but like, I just don't see how you move on from Jimmy G. Now, I know we talk about Deebo Samuel and Bosa both needing to get paid soon and all of these things. Jimmy G's on the roster for one more year. I think you're going to be definitely able to pay those guys when it comes to like salary cap, and obviously Jimmy G is eating up a bunch of that salary cap. But if you just talk to those guys and be like, look, we are going to pay you. We want to keep you on this team, but we just don't have the cap space to give it to you right now. Like, you can have that conversation. You can do what Kansas City did with Patrick Mahomes, where you extend him, but it's under the assumption like, hey, you understand that like the next 2 years of your deal like are going to stay the same as if you were a year one rookie. Like, you can have that conversation with Deebo and Nick and be like, hey, we're going to re-sign you and we're going to give you the extension that you want, but we're going to make sure that the current year of your contract stays the same because like salary cap issues. You're required to play for us anyway, and you could be like, but we're just going to give you your massive payday year 2 of your new contract because technically this year, like, there are a lot of things that you can do to bring those guys and sign them. So I don't really have any problems with San Francisco's roster. We're building essentially as the New York Jets, we're building San Francisco 2.0 in New York with different things that we're throwing in there. But again, my question with Trey Lance is not his performance, is not his anything other than the fact that we didn't see him last year at all. He's still really young. I think he's just going to barely be 22 at the beginning of the season. It's just a matter of we need to see more from him. He only threw for 600 yards last year, and it wasn't in very many games. Yes, he has 5 passing touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He ran for like 150 yards, something like that. It's not like I don't believe in Trey Lance. I think he's going to be great. I think he has a lot of things working for him. It's just we didn't see him, so it's hard to evaluate him. So I kind of put him as a Boolean, like not a Boolean, as a mulligan, because it's just like we don't know what to expect from this team. We have no idea what they're doing in the sense of at the quarterback position. So that's really it. Let's move on. So let's talk Justin Fields. Now, to all of my friends who, like we talked about, I was out on Justin Fields all of last year. Every mock draft that had the Jets taking Justin Fields at 2, I would just throw away immediately. I wanted nothing to do with Justin Fields as a quarterback. I didn't like his throwing motion. I loved his athleticism, but I just didn't like the inconsistency with his arm, and I didn't think that it was going to translate to the next level in the NFL. So I want to start by saying that, so that people kind of know where I was coming from with Justin Fields. Now, when he played last year, he surprised me, truthfully and honestly. He surprised the ever-living crap out of me because I didn't think he was going to be able to fix some of those throwing motion errors and some of that footwork error and things like that he had. And he absolutely proved me wrong and did. He fixed some of those throwing errors. He fixed some of those things that he did. And so I was kind of surprised to see that. That being said, Chicago has done absolutely nothing to help their second year quarterback. They let Allen Robinson walk in free agency. They lost their guard. I forget his name. They lost their guard because I think he went to Pittsburgh. That wide receiver room, all they brought in was Equanimeous St. Brown and Byron Pringle, who are both like wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 guys. Like they're not super high end wide receiver talents. They kept Darnell Mooney, but like Darnell Mooney to me is like a low end wide receiver 2, high end wide receiver 3. I don't really see him as a wide receiver 1 on that team. That offensive line is still a dumpster fire. We hope to see Tevin Jenkins come in and like earn playing time, but like when he came back from injury, they didn't play him. Now, I don't know how much of that was like head coach and GM trying to like go at one another and be like, we didn't want this guy. Like, we just don't know. I really liked Tevin Jenkins coming out of college. I was hoping the Jets would have taken him in the second round. But like, it's one of those things where it's just like, they don't have much in that offensive line room outside of like David Montgomery, like Khalil Herbert, maybe. Like, we just don't know what we have in that running back room. We hope to see Daz Newsome come in and maybe like earn a spot, because like I believed in Newsome, and I like him as a wide receiver prospect. It's just hard to look at the Bears and be like, yeah, this team is going to do great things, especially because it looks like they're like selling off pieces. Like, you traded Khalil Mack, and your cornerback room's not great, and your front three is not great, and your linebacker room's not great, and your safety room's not great, and your wide receiver room's not great, and your offensive line. Like, there's just a lot of things. I don't know what the Bears are doing. That's the biggest problem with this team. Does anybody know what the Bears are doing? Bears fans, do you know what the Bears are doing and how they're moving forward? Like, I believe in this front office, and I really like their head coaching staff and like what they're doing here, but it's just like, I just don't know that we're moving in the right direction right now with Justin Fields. And it sucks because, like, ultimately what I think might happen here is we might see the Bears trade away Justin Fields at the end of this year. And it sucks that that's what's going to happen. But, like, he's not the GM's guy. I forget the GM's name. And he's not Eberflus's pick either. It wouldn't be that hard to imagine them going and running it with Fields this year and then trading him next year to try to get a quarterback in next year's draft, right? Like, this isn't their guy. We don't know how they feel about this pick. And it seems like a team that's in ultimate rebuild mode is what I get from the Bears. It seems like they're in sell everything. We need to recoup assets because the previous regime absolutely screwed us. And so let's just get as many things as we can and start this, what should be a 3-year rebuild, but what realistically might turn into a 5-year rebuild, because we have to spend 2 years with a quarterback that we don't like. This is my guess here, by the way. With a quarterback that we don't like and that we didn't pick. Recouping assets from a regime that absolutely just mortgaged the future for nothing. With nothing to show for it. So let's recoup as many assets as we can. Let's get to a team and start building a culture with players that want to be here. Let's build through the draft. And in 2 years or in 3 years, we can move off of Justin Fields, or even in a year, we can move off from Justin Fields, bring in our guy, and start our rebuild the right way. I don't know. Makes a lot of sense if you think of it in that lens. So Justin Fields, again, I'm not very high on him because I think he's gonna look bad, and it's not gonna be Justin Fields' fault. I think it's gonna be the team that he went to fault. I said this from the beginning. I think whatever team Justin Fields goes to is going to define his production at the next level. He needed to go to a place that was going to be able to work with him, fix some of his problems, do some of those things that he needed to get better at, and he went to the Bears. And that sucks because Matt Nagy didn't do any of those things. And so, yeah. So let's move on. Let's go talk Mac Jones. So Mac Jones obviously goes to New England, goes to the Pro Bowl, has an incredible rookie year, has an okay rookie year, and gets all of this hype out of New England because obviously, like, New England was coming from Cam Newton. It wasn't looking too great there. And so let's talk about it. So statistically, he had an absolutely okay year. He had a 67.6 completion percentage. He threw for 3,800 yards, 22 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. That's a perfectly adequate rookie year. He went to the Pro Bowl and absolutely probably should have. And he also he rushed for 129 yards. That's what I was looking for. Now, let's talk about his performance and what we thought about his performance. Now, I don't really think he did anything super spectacular other than the fact that he was the only rookie QB to go to the playoffs. I think that's a big reason why, he went to the Pro Bowl, in my opinion. He was a rookie. He came into an excellent system where, they went 10-7. They were competing for the playoffs the whole time. And that's really it. I think we're going to see a sophomore slump out of Mac Jones is what I'm getting at. And the reason I say that is, who's going to be calling offensive plays in New England? They lost their offensive coordinator to Vegas, right? They haven't brought anybody in to be a new offensive coordinator yet. Is Bill Belichick going to be calling offensive and defensive plays this year? It seems like it. I think Bill Belichick is getting to a point where he's getting a little bit too high on his own success. And I just don't know, man. Mac Jones is such an enigma of a quarterback because it's just he's safe, he's smart, he knows what to do with the ball. We saw that in his touchdown to interception. 22 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. That's awesome. That's a great average for a rookie quarterback. But when you look at it, they weren't winning the games because of the ground attack. I mean, the through the air attack. They were winning games by running the ball a lot. That was really it. Stevenson and Harris and Aguilar and they were just running the ball a crap ton. And so I look at this and I go, this team is definitely an enigma. I don't think Mac Jones is going to have a bad year, but I think we know what Mac Jones is. I think defenses are going to figure out that Bill Belichick and that offense didn't believe in sorry about that. I think we saw that the offensive scheme, offensive coordinators and offensive staff didn't believe in Mac Jones's arm enough to try to trust him to throw the ball. They ran the ball a lot and they really tried to use play action to get his arm involved. What I'm seeing here out of New England is kind of a rehash of what happened to the Jets in the early 2010s with Mark Sanchez. It's a guy with a limited throwing ability, with a team that has an excellent defense, a really, really good run game, and so they're just going to ground and pound and hope that defense can win them games. And I absolutely think that that's where they're going. Mac Jones is definitely deserved to be a first-round pick, and I don't think that he's a bad quarterback, but he's limited with his arm and what he can do on that front. And then the other problem that you have to have with them is their wide receiver room. Now, they did go out and they did go and get Devontae Parker. But, do you still believe in Nelson Aguilar? Do you still believe in Jacoby Myers? Are these guys going to have statistically good seasons? They still have an incredible offensive line, but it's one of those things where they didn't change much on that team in the sense of, they didn't really bring in good players in the offseason. They didn't bring in anybody that was going to change the way that the game was played. They lost the best corner in football and they haven't really replaced his production. So again, very, very, very interesting to see where New England is going to headed. I think Mac Jones is going to kind of stay the same. I don't think he's going to have an explosion of a year, and I don't think he's going to have a sophomore slump. But in the NFL, staying the same is not good. Look at what happened with Kansas City. They kind of played the same backyard style of football. Teams caught up, and now they started to struggle. And they had to change and adapt to the way that plays were called and things like that. So let's see what happens in New England. I'm very excited for the Jets versus New England games because, it is going to be an incredible, incredible bout. Because, like I said, I think we're going to be a better defense and we're going to be a better team. And you add that with the fact that Mac Jones is very limited, like, arm and very limited skill set. It's interesting to see what's going to happen there. But let's move on. Let's talk Davis Mills. Now, Davis Mills is only in this list because he's going to be starting for the Houston Texans. And let me start by saying that, like, no one has any idea what the Houston Texans are going to be at all. This front office with Nick Caserio seems so lost on what they're going to be doing. Their transactions that they're having as a team for, like, players that they're bringing in are so kind of like whatever. They didn't really bring in anybody that we look at and you go, oh my God, this guy's the guy. They're bringing in this guy. Like, outside of bringing back and re-signing, what's his name? Brandon Cooks, this team looks largely the same that they did last year. And I don't think 2 first-round picks this year is going to do much for that team. Like, at all. Their linebacker, like, their slated linebacker depth chart has Blake Cashman as one of their starting linebackers. It's just like, what are you going to do in, like, if you look at the Pro Football Focus grades of all of these players, like, they're the only shining spots that they have on this team is at edge rusher and Jonathan Grenard and wide receiver at Brandon Cooks. Okoronkwo is given a good grade, but that was, I think, partly because he was at LA last year. We have to see what he's going to look like when he's not in that rotational role, because I think they brought him in to be a starter. Yes, they have the 3rd overall pick, but, like, I think that 3rd overall pick should definitely be an offensive lineman. That offensive line is horrible. It's atrocious. It's one of the worst in the league. And I think that they only kept Laramie Tunsil because they're trying to trade him away, and his draft trade value is in the dirt right now. I don't believe that they believe in Titus Howard at all. They didn't take his 5th-year option. Like, if you believe in a guy and you like a guy and you want him to be on your team, would you not take his 5th-year option? And if you aren't taking his 5th-year option, would you not extend him before the beginning of the season? Like, they haven't done anything like that. And there's no reports coming out of Houston that they've even began to have those conversations, like, at all. So I just don't look at that offensive line and say, like, they believe in their offensive line at all. They brought in a new offensive line coach, and it's the guy that came out of Jacksonville, and I don't like that guy at all. So I don't believe that he's going to be able to develop any of these guys that they're taking anyway. At 3, a player like Evan Neal or Ika Mekwonu is by far and away better than any of the offensive linemen that you have on your team right now. Laramie Tunsil is very clearly cashing plays in. He's just saying, screw it. I don't want to be here. I'm not going to exert myself and hurt myself for a team that's not going to win football games. Titus Howard is very, very, very close to really kind of getting that bust tag put on him, because he's not living up to that 1st-round hype that he got. You know, he's not living up to that 23rd overall selection hype. The rest of that offensive line is great. Outside of Brandon Cooks, they have some wide receiver prospects, but, like, if Sexy Rexy and, like, is Burkhead is going to be your number 1 wide receiver, like, again, I think what they're doing here in Houston is very, very clear. I think they're going to keep Davis Mills because they know what Davis Mills' ceiling is going to be, right? Davis Mills is a game manager. Davis Mills is a guy who's going to just dink and dunk his way up the field, and he's going to, every once in a while, you can ask him to throw the deep ball, and he can do it. He's smart, and I like Davis Mills, and it sucks that he's in Houston right now, because I think if Davis Mills was on another team, like a team that was a little bit better built, like, a great example of that is, like, I would love to see what Davis Mills would look like in New Orleans. New Orleans has a much, much better team. Like, what if instead of taking Ian Book, they took Davis Mills? Like, that would have been, to me, a really, really interesting pick for New Orleans. So, again, I think Davis Mills is going to, even though statistically he probably had one of the better years outside of Mac Jones, like, I just don't believe in the Houston Texans. And that's really the issue here. The Texans are in a really, really rough spot as a franchise. They have a long way to go. We don't know what this front office is in Nick Caserio. And so we have to see what their picks are going to be. And I think it's I think what they do at 3 and 13 is going to be very, very telling of how this franchise is going to move forward. And so let's see. I think they're definitely going to be in on a quarterback next year. I think that's what this whole plan is. Davis Mills is a third-round pick. You're not going to bank your franchise on a third-round pick. So you draft Davis Mills, you bring him in, and then you just go get whoever you consider quarterback number 1 next year. Whether that's C.J. Stroud, whether it's the kid out of Miami, whether that's Bryce Young, whether that's Kadon Slovis. I believe Kadon Slovis is going to have a great year at Pitt. I hope, at least. But we'll see. I think Davis Mills I think he's definitely going to take a step back, but I think the biggest thing that's going to define this is going to be this draft. What do they pick at 13 and what do they pick at 3? I think are very, 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 very important. Like I said, I think they should go offensive line because I think they need it. Like if it was me, I wouldn't be mad if they went offensive line at 3 and 13. Like, because they just need that much help on the offensive line. They need help everywhere else as well, but like, you win football games in the trenches. They've got a pretty solid front 4 on defense. So let's just go win on the offensive line. And if it doesn't work, because like you just got to make sure Davis Mills is the guy, right? You have Brandon Cooks, who's very clearly a wide receiver 1. Nico Collins was a surprise last year and really showed that he could be a wide receiver 2. And you got him in the 3rd round. That's great. Maybe invest a 2nd round pick in a tight end so that he has a tight end target, because like Pharaoh Brown isn't great, and you kind of want to bring in a little bit higher of an upside when you look at the tight end room. So, I guess they do have Brevin Jordan. But is Brevin Jordan anything special? Not really, right? Nah. Again, maybe go get a tight end to help that room out. Maybe draft a running back. I definitely think they should draft a running back. Burkhead cannot be your running back 1 in this day and age, but yeah, Davis Mills, he's an interesting guy to talk about. This is I don't know what to think about him as a team, like him as a player with that team built around him and what's going to happen there. And last but not least, let's talk about the New York Jets and Zach Wilson. Now, I think, like I said, as a Jets fan, I obviously hope that Zach Wilson is going to have a great revival, and not a revival, but a great jump in his year 2. You hope that that's what you see. But let's talk about statistically why I think that's going to happen. Let's talk about tangible things that we can talk about that are going to make those things happen. So, number 1, Zach Wilson is the only quarterback in this year's draft, not in this year's draft, in going into year 2, who is going to have the same exact coaching staff around him. He's the only one. Every other year 2 quarterback is either going into a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator, or a combination of the both, right? And so familiarity with the scheme is a big, big deal. Number 2, they're bringing back his wide receiver room. The targets that he felt comfortable with are coming back. And they're replacing, hopefully, Jamison Crowder with a number 1 wide receiver. So when you look at Corey Davis coming back, Elijah Moore coming back, Denzel Mims coming back, Braxton Berrios coming back. Those are all guys that he already has chemistry with. So he's not going to have to spend a whole lot of time building chemistry with his wide receiver room, because 4 of the 5 guys that you're assuming are going to start on that roster next year have already been there. He's only really going to have to develop chemistry with 1 guy. Now, whether that guy comes in the draft or in free agency or in a trade, whatever it is, it's only 1 person. It's easier to get chemistry with 1 person than it is to go and get chemistry with a whole new wide receiver room. Next, the offensive line has gotten much better. George Fant, Mekhi Becton, with Becton coming back, your tackles are going to be great. Bringing in Laken Tomlinson and then bumping Vera Tucker to the right side is awesome. McGovern was one of the better centers in football last year. Like, your offensive line from the beginning of the year is going to be much, much better. Because, again, you're not having a bunch of turnover on the offensive line. Offensive line is going to be the same unit that ran last year, minus Morgan Moses. So you've got that there. Michael Carter is coming back, and I expect a really, really good year out of Michael Carter. And then the most important thing is we finally have tight ends that we can believe in. CJ Uzomah and Tyler Conklin being brought in means that we're going to be able to run out of 12 personnel a lot more often. a lot more often. The Jets tried to, at the beginning of the year, run 12 personnel, the most out of any team in the NFL, and it didn't work because we just didn't have the tight ends to do it. Now, when you're looking at that wide receiver room and now this tight end room, and you're saying Zach Wilson is not only going to have protection and time to throw the ball, but he's going to have targets that are actually going to be able to catch the ball and do those things in the tight end room. A tight end is an excellent safety blanket. And with Uzomah being able to work in the middle of the field, crossing routes and all of those things, and be a good blocker, and he's got sure hands, and then you add Tyler Conklin's vertical ability, especially if he's being covered by linebackers and things like that, and then you just add Elijah Moore and Corey Davis and Braxton Berrios, and I still believe in Denzel Mims coming off of the outside, and you can have this rotation, and whoever we draft at number 10, I'm assuming, or even in the second round, like, we're going to see an explosion in production out of Zach Wilson. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if we took a wide receiver in the second round. I think like a guy like George Pickens. I don't think we're that desperate for a wide receiver, honestly, when you look at wide receiver ones. I think the team believes in Elijah Moore. I think we're going to try to scheme guys open. And I keep having to remind myself that wide receiver production in the San Francisco West Coast offense comes from scheming guys open. It's not about guys really getting open. It's about guys scheming themselves open. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we trade back into the first round for a wide receiver, or if we just wait to see if there's a wide receiver in the second round. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. My guy that I'm really kind of like in on, there's two guys, and that's Treylon Burks. I really, really like Treylon Burks. If we're talking about first round wide receivers, I really, really like Treylon Burks and the versatility that he provides. But the other guy for me is Drake London. And if we're going to go in the second round, I think there's only one answer, and I think that's George Pickens. I love George Pickens' like meanness and what he brings to the football field. So there's that. And then when you look at it, our defense has gotten better. And quoting Robert Saleh, and what he said is, if you want your offense and if you want your quarterback to do better, get him the ball more. Go get the other quarterback. And I really think that we're going to see a really, really big jump in our defensive production this year. Knock on wood, hopefully we're not going to have a bunch of guys injured and hurt all year. With Carl Lawson coming back, DJ Reed being added to the mix, LaMarcus Joyner hopefully being able to actually play the year, and Jordan Whitehead coming in from Tampa. You know, Hall now moves over to the number 2 cornerback, which I think is a really, really good thing. DJ Reed can now be cornerback 1. We add an edge rusher, and so that we can move Jonathan Franklin Myers inside in the draft. We maybe add a linebacker, and these linebackers, like, we aren't super devastated at linebacker all year. There's a lot of upside on this defense, and year 2 in this scheme, I think players are going to get better and more familiar. We just need to have better than the 32 ranked overall defense. So that's really it, guys. Those are my thoughts on the quarterbacks and the year 2 quarterbacks, and like what I think might happen and what's going to happen and all of that stuff. Let me know what you guys think. I'd love to hear it, hear about it, and what you guys are, where your guys' head is at. Let me know again, like, who you guys think is going to be the best quarterback going into year 2, not in this draft. I know this was a longer video, but I kind of wanted to take a little bit of a deeper dive and talk about these guys a little bit more. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, the like button, and thanks for stopping by. And last but not least, go Jets.